The entire cafe in downtown Toronto went silent when she said it. Beat me in chess and I'll marry you. People laughed, thinking it was a joke. Cameras flashed. Someone even whistled. But she wasn't smiling. Clara Whitmore, the youngest tech CEO in Canada, had just signed a $1 billion AI partnership that morning. At 32, she owned half the skyline and most of the headlines. Interviews called her brilliant. Critics called her ruthless. Dating apps called her intimidating. Across from her, sitting in a worn winter jacket that had seen too many Canadian winters, was Daniel Reyes, a single dad who had only stepped into the cafe to escape the cold with his 8-year-old daughter, Sophie. Daniel looked at the chessboard between them, then at Clara. "You don't want to marry someone who beats you," he said calmly. "You want someone who stays when you lose." That reply didn't just shock her. It unsettled something she didn't know was fragile. It started innocently. Clara had been hosting a public, Chess and Coffee with the CEO, event to promote her company's new strategic thinking program. Anyone who could beat her would win $10,000. No one had ever come close. Daniel wasn't there for the prize. Sophie had spotted the giant outdoor chessboard and begged him to let her watch. She loved chess. It reminded her of her late mother, who used to play with her every Sunday before cancer took her 2 years ago. When Clara noticed Daniel watching quietly from the side, she misread his silence as challenge. "Care to try?" she asked. He hesitated. He hadn't played seriously in years. Life had become about double shifts, daycare pickups, and stretching every Canadian dollar as far as it would go in a city that kept getting more expensive. "I'm not really dressed for a billionaire's game," he replied softly. Clara smirked. "Chess doesn't care about your jacket." Sophie tugged his sleeve. "Please, Daddy." And that's how he ended up sitting across from the most powerful woman in the room. The first few moves were simple, polite, predictable. Clara played aggressively, like she did in business, quick advances, bold sacrifices. Daniel played patiently, defensive, observant. He wasn't trying to win. He was studying her. "You're holding back," she said 10 minutes in. "No," he replied. "I'm listening." "Listening to what?" "To what you're afraid of." The crowd murmured. Clara's jaw tightened. No one spoke to her like that. Board members feared her. Investors admired her. Competitors avoided her. But this man, who probably took the TTC to work and packed school lunches at 6 a.m., was reading her like an open book. Move by move, the game shifted. Clara grew impatient. She pushed harder. Daniel waited, protected his pieces, sacrificed when necessary. "You play like you have nothing to lose," she said. "I lost my wife," he answered quietly. "You learn what matters after that." The air changed. For the first time, Clara stopped seeing him as an opponent. 27 moves in, her queen was trapped. The cafe erupted when Daniel calmly said, "Checkmate." Clara stared at the board. She hadn't lost a public match in 5 years. True to her bold personality, she stood up and said loudly, "Well, I guess I'm getting married." Everyone laughed again. But Daniel didn't. "I didn't play to marry you," he said gently. "I played because my daughter believes you can learn something from anyone." That stung more than losing. Later that evening, long after the crowd dispersed and the headlines started trending across Canadian social media, Clara sat alone in her penthouse overlooking Lake Ontario. For the first time in years, she didn't feel victorious. She replayed his words. "You want someone who stays when you lose." Clara had built her empire after growing up in foster care in Vancouver. She learned early that depending on people meant disappointment. Winning meant safety. Control meant survival. Marriage had never been about love to her. It was about finding someone strong enough to match her. But Daniel wasn't trying to match her. He was grounded in something stronger: responsibility, grief, fatherhood. The next week, Clara did something she had never done before. She showed up unannounced at Daniel's modest Scarborough apartment. Sophie answered the door. "You're the chess lady," she said excitedly. Daniel appeared behind her, surprised. "I'm not here for a rematch," Clara said. "I'm here to learn." Over cups of simple home-brewed coffee, she listened. Really listened. She learned how Daniel balanced remote IT contract work with raising Sophie. How he still set an empty place at the dinner table on his wife's birthday. How he never missed a parent-teacher meeting, even if it meant losing income. She noticed the cracks in the walls, the second-hand furniture, the warmth in that tiny apartment that her luxury penthouse never had. You could have taken the $10,000, Clara said at one point. Daniel shrugged. Sophie doesn't need a hero with money. She needs a dad with time. Something inside Clara shifted. Over the following months, she kept coming back. Not as a CEO. Not as a challenge. Just Clara. She helped Sophie with math homework. Daniel fixed a bug in her company's system after hours without charging her. They played chess at the small kitchen table, sometimes with Sophie between them, moving pieces with serious concentration. Clara began to see that life wasn't about conquering the board. It was about who sat across from you. One snowy evening, as Toronto streets glowed under fresh white snowfall, Clara lost another game to Daniel. She laughed this time. I'm starting to think you're unbeatable. Daniel shook his head. No, I just don't play to win. There was silence. Comfortable this time. Why did you really say that? She asked. About staying when someone loses. He looked at Sophie asleep on the couch. Because my wife stayed, he said. Even when I wasn't the strongest man in the room. That's what love is. Not winning. Staying. Clara felt tears she hadn't allowed herself in years. For the first time, she didn't feel like the CEO of anything. She felt human. Months later, there was no viral proposal. No press release. No billion-dollar spectacle. Just a small winter ceremony in a quiet Ontario chapel, with a handful of friends, a simple white dress, and Sophie proudly holding the rings. Before they exchanged vows, Clara whispered, "You know I beat you once at chess." Daniel smiled. "And I stayed." The crowd chuckled softly. As they said, "I do," Clara understood something her success had never taught her. Love isn't about finding someone who can defeat you. It's about finding someone who sits down across from you, plays honestly, and never leaves the table, even when the game gets hard. And if you're watching this, maybe the real question isn't whether you can win. Maybe it's whether you're willing to stay.